thought it would be fun, seeing as it's the Christmas season, to paint something a little bit Christmassy. And I don't know about you, but in my area we don't get the cardinals, which are of course such an amazing red kind of Christmassy bird, winter bird, but we're too far north, so I have never seen a cardinal in my northern British Columbia region. But we do get chickadees all year round, and they're kind of ubiquitous at least in North America. So I thought we'd just paint some chickadees and think of winter. And if you enjoy this kind of class, we're just kind of doing a sketchy little demonstration, having fun with painting an impressionistic image of chickadees. You might enjoy my holiday watercolor workshop, which covers 3 kind of Christmassy themes. So these are ones I've kind of done for fun. They're just little sketches that I've done using images I found online. And I'm very hesitant to recommend anybody paint with images you find online because of the copyright issue there. The photographer owns that image, and painting something that is directly derived from an online image or a photo you found in a magazine or calendar or wherever, you are violating copyright were you to ever try to sell or profit by those images. So the very most I will ever do if I'm looking at images online is kind of catalog them in my head to be inspired by, and never try to copy them directly. It's a good idea to immerse yourself in an image to kind of get the feel for it and know how to paint it. But as for directly copying anything I would find online, I would just never do that. I try to work from my own reference photos whenever possible. So with that said, I'll leave it to you to track down your own reference image. For me, I'm just going to use the variety of images I do have cataloged, and of course the experience I have in studying the chickadees that come to the bird feeder outside of my home. And we're going to just have a little bit of fun with it. And I really do recommend you paint the same subject over and over again as a way to really familiarize yourself with it and become confident. So we're going to just start by mixing up a nice dark, and here I'm using violet. This is Winsor violet, and this is Payne's gray here. And Payne's gray has black in it, so it's actually quite a dark color, as you can see there. And if I mix it with violet, it just gives it a little bit more of a purpley tone instead of so blue-gray. So I think I like the look of that. I could just have a little fun with it, make it a little bit more complex. Adding a little alizarin crimson gives me kind of a redder dark violet, which I like as well. But I'm going to go back, throw that Payne's gray in, just because the chickadees I've observed, they're really quite a dark, warm black. And so I want a black that's, and I can mess around with that. I mean, it's so easy to get sidetracked just by trying to find the right mix of color. You can see here it's definitely a little bit bluer. And if I were to add, let's say, cadmium red to my mix, then I'm getting kind of a reddish dark there. And straight cadmium red and Payne's gray. It's going to give you actually a little bit more of what I want. It's kind of a true black. It's not straight black. In watercolor we don't use straight black generally, unless you're a really big rule breaker. But it's a warm black that I think will adapt itself really well to our chickadee. So I'll leave this strip of paper at the top for testing out any other color mixes I might want to try. And in here I'll work on my little kind of greeting card size chickadee. So we're just going to start with our darkest colors, and you may have heard in watercolor to paint from light to dark, but we don't always do that. Sometimes it can be very beneficial to start with your darks first and lay those in, especially when it's like this little bird that has such a dominant dark color. So we're just going to do that little cap, and kind of curves around his eye there, like so. And then we have the beak coming out here, and it's actually a hair lighter than the cap, at least in my references. So we'll actually go back and change that. But I really do like putting on almost more color than you need this early into a painting, because it can be hard to add color to watercolor. Once it's started to dry, you start to get marks. But what you can do is you can kind of remove water from your brush, and then you have an area that's come out too dark, and your brush will actually act like a sponge and because it's drier than that wet pigment you place down. And while it looks straight black to us, I mean, really he's got texture in there, he's got feathers. So I can even lighten that area a little bit and give it a little bit of texture. And then I'm just going to continue painting. I've got kind of this area I'll leave white because it's kind of the white of the bird, but with a damp brush I can go in and soften a little bit of the edges here just to give a little bit of texture, feathers. And if you're adding water, it's going to start moving that color around. I'll go in a little closer so you can see it. This is my first time filming in my new studio, and I'm just hoping the lighting will be good. In the future we might have to adapt it, especially if I'm shooting at night, as I am today. So here you can see just the depth you've got. It's one solid color. It's the same pigment I mixed in my palette just a moment ago, but because I've lifted out some color and softened some edges, you've got some variation in value, which is really pretty. Do keep an eye, like I lifted out I sponged out some color with my brush from the beak, but it's gonna want, as long as the area is wet, color might want to flow back in there. Gravity, take the path of least resistance. So you can just very carefully lift out more color if you need to. So we'll just leave that and we'll continue on the little bird's body. And he's got a lot of gray, but he's also got kind of a tan color. For my tan, down on the bottom of my palette, I've got a quinacridone gold. I've got some raw sienna. And raw sienna is a really pretty buttery kind of yellow, so I'm going to use some of that. Quinacridone gold is a little bit orangey, but I like using it too, so we're going to use a little bit of both of those. And we're just going to paint his breast here. And he's quite a chubby little bird, kind of bulges out like so. There's going to be a wing in there too that we'll have to worry about, but right now I'm just working in, this is one of my lighter colors in his body. And the other thing I want to do is I want to be a little bit courageous with color. Just because it says gray doesn't mean it has to be boring. So I'm adding a little bit of cobalt blue to that Payne's gray mixture that I had here. And I'm going to use that to start creating his wing. And I want there to be some fluidity, so I'm touching it right into that golden area. This is a wing, I need it to have. And I'm stroking my brush. I really like those brush strokes in kind of those feathery shapes. And look how pretty that is. Very pretty. And if I touch a little bit of that blue into here, I can create a shadow. His underside, kind of like that. And I can even add a little bit, I'm going to add a tiny bit of this violet to my buttery yellow mixture. When you mix violet and yellow, you get a neutral, kind of a brownish usually, and just touch that into his chest so I get a little bit of a shadow in there. Don't be afraid, I'm going to grab some Payne's Gray to be bold. What if I were to, define some feathers with just a few strokes of Payne's Gray? Let's zoom in so you can get a closer look at that. I don't want to move it because it's very wet in there right now, but you can see the pretty little fluid bits in there. And I really like that, how expressive this simple shape is. And I'm not even going to want to do too much more with this little bird. He needs a tail. And then I'm going to paint the little branch he sits on, and then we're going to be done. And something like this that you can paint in 5 or 10 minutes can really be a fun way to maybe create a greeting card for a friend, or just to learn to really get to know your subject. Painting doesn't have to take all day or hours and hours, and whether or not your painting is successful has nothing to do with how long it took you to paint it. I'm going just straight back from the tail here, and I feel like that's out of proportion, although it does kind of line up with my reference image. And he's got kind of some darker feathers, the tips of his tail as well. So we'll just go like so, and draw it straight up from there. He also kind of needs a roundedness at his back there for that, his other wing on his other side. Oh, I like that. He's got a little foot coming out, and this is just still straight Payne's gray, and even his little foot doesn't have to be complicated. We've kind of just got, it's kind of rolls around. I'm going to paint some snow here, so I don't even want to show the whole foot. His little claw. And another one here coming down. This is an area, I feel like I'm going backwards. No, it's almost, keep just checking back at my reference photo. It's almost, this is the area where you'll make or break your little bird, because if your feet are inauthentic, you know, if your feet angles are wrong, it's gonna look wrong. So you wanna keep looking back to your reference image and just getting those proportions. Now I'm gonna paint him on a little snowy branch. So what I'm gonna do first is paint the shadows on my snow. And just kind of guessing. Here's some snow with cobalt blue. And maybe a little bit more here. And I'm painting the bottom of my little clumps of snow, because of course shadows are generally on the undersides of things if the light is coming from above. And I'm just going to add some water to soften that out. This is a very loose and gestural painting, so I don't want to overdo it. There's going to be a little bit of blue shadow where his feet touch the snow as well. And maybe another mound there. And then out from under our snow, and there's a lot of shadow there, but that's okay. Again, just using my brush as a sponge to lift and soften some of those areas. Isn't that pretty? And then grabbing some green, I'm going to grab this Paraline green, which is a really dark green. I think it has black in it. And just paint some pine needles to give our Christmassy painting there its Christmassy feel. Of course, I could put my birdie on apple blossoms if it was spring, or you know, any kind of leaf really. Do something for summer or autumn leaves. So this could adapt itself to any time of year. And I'm just using gestural strokes, expressive brush strokes that kind of follow the shape of what the pine needles would do. Maybe there's a little bit of needles poking through there. A few. And maybe I want a little bit of a branch too, so we'll grab some brown. You can mix your own browns by mixing complementary colors. This is burnt umber that I have in my palette, so I'm going to take some burnt umber, but I'm going to mix it with this puddle of Payne's gray, just to make it a little darker and more complicated. I love mixing colors to add kind of complexity in my paintings. And because I've got, you know, wet, all this is wet paint, this is done in one sitting. So you're going to see a lot of color running together here. But like I said, this is a sketch. We're allowed to paint fast and loose, and Payne's gray again for shadows. Just to give our branch a little bit of texture. And I think we're almost done. We're going to give it a chance to dry. Feel like maybe, should I put some, oh, I'm going to leave it, keep it simple. It would be really easy to create an entire painting using our Chickadee just by starting maybe with a wet and wet background, allowing that to dry, some soft grays and blues for a kind of wintry background, some suggestions of pine branches, and then to go in and create our little Chickadee. But I really just wanted to show you how much fun it can be to create a painting in in 15 minutes or less. And when you're working on something like that, it's very freeing. You haven't put a lot into it, so if it messes up, that's okay. You lost 15 minutes, but guess what? You got to spend that time being creative. In my holiday workshop, I cover painting a winter landscape, Christmas tree. So we go over painting evergreens in that mini workshop, as well as painting poinsettias in my loose and fluid, intuitive kind of style. And I think you'll enjoy it. It was a lot of fun to create the workshop. And if you're interested in checking it out, it's only $20. And again, anytime you spend creating is wonderful therapy, creative therapy for anyone. So it's always worth it. I hope you enjoy your painting adventure.